Join the Community Wine and Spirits monthly wine club, the Mutual Satisfaction Society. You'll receive 3 carefully selected bottles every month, complete with tasting notes and detailed information on each wine, all for $90. Join in the next 24 hours and get 20% off your first shipment. Want fancier wine? We got you. Join the Mutual Satisfaction Society Plus for extra satisfaction. $150 will get you 3 very special bottles. Let us take the trouble out of selecting great wines that you will love. Your first shipment is 20% off just for listening to View the Right Thing. Join the community today at www.communitywineandspirits.com or DM us at CommunityWS.
One of the longest gestating and highly unlikely sequels ever made completely blew audiences away in the summer of 2022. So much so that it was the biggest box office smash of the year and was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Wes and Alexis get in their flight suits, hit the flight deck, and fly high in their review of Top Gun: Maverick on this episode of View the Right Thing.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of View the Right Thing. We're back. Hi, Alexis. How you doing?
Hi, Wes. I'm pretty great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Well, okay, so my voice is all jacked up because I have this like terrible allergy thing going on, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good because we have some new equipment. Yeah. We have some new software. I have lots of faith that we're not going to lose our episodes to technical problems now. So I'm pretty excited about all of that. And we're also reapproaching the podcast.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting as well. So for those just tuning in and finding out that we're changing the podcast back up, we're kind of going back to the old model where we're going to watch and discuss movies that maybe aren't in the theater anymore. You know, we kind of got away from this original idea, which was as movie people get shocked by the things that we haven't seen. So wanted to try to bring that back in a little bit, but also just sort of focus a little bit more on movies that have some sort of significance to film as a whole, and are the movies that everyone should see before they die.
Yeah.
So that's what this is going to be all about now. And we're going back to the bucket, but we're going to have a new bucket because it doesn't seem right. You know, I started a specific bucket with Steve, and it doesn't feel like I should just give you Steve's hand-me-downs. So I have a new bucket that we're gonna use. So
that sounds great.
At the end of this, so we're going to talk about a movie now, and then at the end of the episode, we will tell you what the next episode's movie is going to be, so that way listeners have a chance to watch the movie ahead of time, and then they can tune in and join along with our discussion like it's a book club.
Yeah.
So pretty exciting. So you doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we watched Top Gun Maverick, which you had never seen.
Never seen, except for like maybe the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, because you have a friend that was in it.
I do.
Yeah. So
yes.
Reasonable that you had seen that. Okay, well, so let's tell you what Top Gun's about real quick, and then we'll kind of go into like what you thought, and I'm gonna let you kind of lead the plot discussion a little bit, and I'll pepper in some facts and some interesting things about it. So Top Gun Maverick, after 30 years, Maverick, played by Tom Cruise, is still pushing the envelope as a top naval aviator, but must confront ghosts of his past when he leads Top Gun's elite graduates on a mission that demands the ultimate sacrifice from those chosen to fly it. This film won the Academy Award for Best Sound. It was Oscar nominated for film editing, original song, visual effects, adapted screenplay, and Best Picture.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you blown away a little bit that was nominated for Best Picture?
No, I'm actually not surprised that it was nominated for Best Picture, because I do think that it was a really captivating film and story, and I thought it was quite moving.
And it came at a really important time where we were just kind of coming out of COVID. Mm-hmm. People were starting to just like debate about going back to theaters, and this sort of gave people a reason to go back to theaters.
Yeah.
This was after Spider-Man, but before much else was really coming out.
Right.
And when this came out, Steven Spielberg approached Tom Cruise and said, you saved Hollywood's ass. Like, you might have saved theatrical distribution, and Top Gun Maverick might have saved the entire theatrical industry.
Whoa.
Yeah, big praise from Steven Spielberg.
That's some huge praise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
big movie.
It was a big movie.
Yeah. So the question is always at the top is, did you enjoy this film?
I did enjoy this
You
film.
did? Yay.
Yeah. Thankfully, I wasn't really sure. 'Cause-
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were going in because I feel like if you hadn't seen it by this point, you probably were fine just never watching it, and maybe had some preconceived notions that you wouldn't like it or something.
Potentially. I just, I guess when it came out, I wasn't in a place where I needed to see it, nor did I want to see it. And I guess I was building it up in my head to be something lame and
Yeah.
like, this is a dude bro movie, but it's really not
No.
like a dude bro movie. It's it's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's got a little love story in it, and it's got a couple women fighter pilots. One specifically was featured a lot more, but
Yeah.
and they changed, the opening. Used to just talk about the brave men, and now it's the brave men and women.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Because at the time of the first Top Gun film, women weren't allowed to be fighter pilots. Yeah, 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah, but they are now.
Thank goodness.
Look out, fellas! They're coming for our jobs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me about what you thought about it, and give me a little rundown of how this went for you.
Well, I took some various notes
Yeah.
that in the moment I was like, yeah, these are really great notes. And now that I'm looking at them, I'm like, well,
I bet they're great notes.
they work like my brain.
Okay.
I was intrigued at the opening when they were in the Mojave Desert.
Okay.
Because that's where I was born.
Oh, okay. The Dark Star plane experiment is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
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 So the Dark Star is actually pretty cool. It's a mock-up idea by the same people that made what we call the SR-71 Blackbird, which is a stealth plane, and you've seen it probably in things. It's black. It looks a lot like this one.
Yeah.
This Dark Star is also sometimes named the SR-72, so it's sort of like the next generation. It's supposed to actually be unmanned, I believe, but in this they made it a manned craft.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
a little stealth, little stealth boy.
What was when Maverick gets on his motorcycle at the beginning and they do a close-up of the back and it just says Kawasaki and 55. Is there some sort of symbolism?
So he drives a Kawasaki, a different model of Kawasaki, an older one,
Okay.
in the original Top Gun. So I think that's like a piece of it, and it's sort of showing like he's older, but he hasn't changed. Like this is still the same guy.
Okay.
Like just prior to that, he you hear the Top Gun bells, the like bong, and he opens up his locker, and it's like bong, and he pulls out. There's one of those zipper. You're a seamstress, you would know what these things are called. A garment bag.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he opens the garment bag and then he pulls out the leather jacket. It's like bong. It's
Yeah.
here's the guy. He's back. Some new patches on his jacket, but
Yes.
so it's sort of. I think the motorcycle sort of mostly to symbolize that. I don't know if the number 55 is supposed to mean anything.
Okay.
The original film came out in 1986, which 86 does show up in the film, real briefly.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, when Hangman goes to play a song on the jukebox, he's like, it's Lowrider, and he's
Yeah.
like, I love this song. He types in 8 and 6.
Shoot. I wasn't looking, and I should have been looking.
Yeah, it's all right.
At
It's
that-
all right. You were taking notes. So
Probably.
if there was something that I thought you was important, I was like, Alexis. There was only like one time
Right.
where you were looking down. I was like, oh, she should see this.
It was a long note I was taking.
Yeah.
I did find it weird that when Maverick went to his office, where he had all the pictures of like
the
Goose
hangar, yeah,
and in the hangar, it was kind of odd that the picture that he had of Goose with his wife and son was basically Anthony Edwards and Meg Ryan kissing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, if I had pictures of my friends with their child, I wouldn't keep one of them kissing. It just seemed odd.
So I think I might not be right, but I think the premise is that was one of Goose's photos, and that he kept Goose's things.
I see. Okay.
Because he received like Goose's locker of things, right, and his dog tags, and like his wife didn't get his dog tags.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah, I mean they were close, they're brothers.
Yeah. And did he not keep in touch with them?
Well, he did. He did to some extent. I think that was, part of the crux of the film is Rooster doesn't understand why Maverick pulled his papers and stunted his career. And we learned that Maverick did this, again, sorry for my voice. Maverick did this because Goose's wife or widow had asked him to do this because she didn't want I was trying to think of his real name. Rooster didn't want him to die the same way his father did, or die in a plane. And so he must have had some contact with them.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point, but probably not after she died, for sure. And not after he pulled those papers, because Rooster wouldn't have wanted to talk to him at that point.
Yeah.
So I would say probably till the kid was 18 at least.
Yeah.
17 or 18.
Yeah. Wow.
Good question. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's those things. It's one of those things where it's like you just have to sort of, they give us some context clues. We just have to kind of fill in the blanks ourselves.
Right.
So,
because it would be better to just fill in the clues ourselves than them giving us all of this ridiculous backstory, and then the movie's 3 hours long. And but it was very interesting. I thought I liked that he had to take this particular plane to Mach 10, and exactly that. Otherwise, the program was going to be scrapped.
Yeah.
And as usual, he didn't follow.
Yeah.
He did what was that?
I don't think going over 10 scrapped the program, because the program survived, which we did learn through a little bit of dialogue. It was very quick.
Oh.
So when Ed Harris is talking to him and telling him you got to go back to Top Gun, he's like, yeah, you saved these people's jobs, but you've effed over yourself.
Oh,
so
okay, good.
So the program was saved. I think the point was don't go over 10 because you're probably going to die.
Right. Because the glass on the plane was starting to melt. It was so hot.
And presumably that thing's destroyed now, right?
Yeah.
Because he had to bail out.
Right. I mean, I can't comprehend how fast Mach 10 is.
I believe it's roughly 2 miles every second.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because 2
to 2.1 miles every second, I think.
Okay. Jeez, that's incredibly fast. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, way faster than sound, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, because I know later on in the film, they say that they need to go 660 knots at 100 feet high. And I looked up what that is.
Yeah.
And it's quite fast.
Yeah, how fast is it?
It is 759 miles per hour.
Oh, yeah. That's fast.
Just 100 feet from the ground, weaving in and out of rough terrain.
And this Mach 10 thing is, definitely sort of a fantasy. The amount of G's that it pulls on you, astronauts go through that, right? But they're able to achieve that because they go significantly higher, and they go into orbit essentially. So they're able to achieve a faster speed with a higher gravitational pull, and be able to survive. So.
Wow. And they also train for a very long time to build their bodies up to that sort of pressure.
Yeah.
And in this particular situation, they really only had 3 weeks. Well, technically.
For this mission?
Yeah, for this mission. So they have to go on a mission. after Maverick gets kicked out of the program that he's held at, where is he?
Oh, the Dark Star program?
The Dark Star program.
Yeah.
There we go. After he gets kicked out of there, he's sent to North Island, which I learned is in San Diego.
Yep.
And
I believe it's actually been taken over by the Marines now. I don't think the Navy controls that anymore. But
well.
I could be wrong. Feel free to send me angry
Please do.
letters.
So it's great that he got sent to Top Gun on a mission instead of being kicked out of the Navy altogether.
Thanks, Iceman.
Right. Thanks, Iceman. It was really great to see Val Kilmer.
I agree. Well, real quick before we move on to that, first of all, Ed Harris being in the movie, even just like a small part, is pretty cool. But how badass is it when he gets out of his car and that plane like flies over and he like it only takes a step just to steady himself, but like he's basically a rock.
Yeah.
Such a badass.
Yeah.
They used, I think they used F-18s for that. And then this is one of the few instances where they used CG.
Okay.
They composited the Dark Star image over the F-18 that flew over. And they basically had one take to get it. And the roof coming off of that little guard stand was not expected. It was just like a happy accident.
Oh.
Yeah.
It really made for that, like the feel of how intense that the pressure from that plane. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, so this mission that he has to essentially teach to all of these students. You know, he's such a badass. I love how he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do this."
Oh yeah, immediately. He's
this
like,
is how I'll do it. And,
I don't know who I'm going to take with me.
Right, and they're like, "No, you teach other people." Because there's this uranium plant that's hidden in the middle of.
So they intentionally left the enemy nameless for several reasons.
That's clever.
Interestingly, this film did not come out in China, but the emblems on various aircraft in the film are from different places. So there's Iranian, I believe there's Chinese, Russian. There's definitely Russian MiGs in it, and a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head. But it was intentionally because the idea that this military sort of cobbled together an air force from all over the place. Like they bought through black market, airplanes and things.
Okay.
However, they do show at one point very briefly coordinates for where the attack is going to happen. Oh. And those coordinates are in Russia. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. That
tracks.
That tracks.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much about that, but so yes, Maverick gets to teach these students how to detonate. Do you really want to explode uranium?
I think, well, one, it's underground.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the great answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know. It may be that. So a lot of times we hear things where it's like people are trying to get the capability to what is the word I'm looking for? What do they do with uranium? Not mine it, but enhance it or whatever. They're trying to get nuclear capabilities, and so a lot of times we hear about these missions in terms of they're trying to get this capability, so we're trying to stop them from getting that capability before they get it. So this could be a situation. I mean, I don't know. This is just me sort of like championing the film because I like the film. Yeah. That, this is a facility that's going to do something with uranium. We're going to destroy this facility before they have a chance.
Okay.
That's my best guess. And again, me being a little biased.
Right. It's quite a feat.
Yeah.
It's really a miracle to be able to pull off.
2 miracles, they say.
2 miracles. You are correct.
Well, you want to know the really fun comparison? Imagine that you're a young fighter pilot with no way to lock on to the thing that you're using, so you just have to use the sheer will or the force to go through the trench and hit this little tiny hole and then escape before and then get into the dogfight. Yeah, it's almost like we've seen it before. But yeah, so so it's Star Wars. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm all right with it. If you're going to copy something great, right?
Truly.
Yeah.
That's the best compliment.
Sure.
It truly is.
They did enough to make it their own, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. I liked that there was this little romance, like a little bit of a romance in the movie, and it didn't feel excessive.
Yeah. With Jennifer Connelly's character.
Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah. So that character is mentioned in the first film.
She is.
Yeah, and they kind of allude to that again. She's the daughter of the admiral that sort of gets him in, that's gotten him in trouble before. They mentioned that in the first film, as sort of like a way to show like he's such a scamp. And so this is her. This is Penny. I think Goose calls her Peggy in the first film, but yeah, but her name is Penny.
Okay, I was trying to see like, was Jennifer Connelly in the first one? Because I didn't recall that.
No, she would have been like 14.
Okay.
So it would have been inappropriate because she's like 8 years younger than Tom Cruise.
Okay.
In real life. But they looked like they matched fairly well.
Yeah.
I mean, although we do know that Tom Cruise is like 60 now. But yeah, I thought they visually at least matched pretty well. And they did some nice things where, you know, obviously she rides on the motorbike with him, which is similar to the first film with Charlie. And then she drives a Porsche that's really similar to Charlie's Porsche as well. So I thought that was kind of cute that they had these kind of similarities to the first film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. That was lovely.
Yeah.
There was a point where someone mentioned that Maverick did tours of Bosnia and Iraq.
Yeah.
And that kind of surprised me because how I had understood it from watching the beginning was that he'd stayed at the facility testing all of those planes. And he was given some guff about remaining a captain.
I think it's the idea is that like he did Top Gun training for 2 months and then went back out to fight. Ended up being a test pilot and probably was called to fight occasionally because he's, you know, like the best of the best.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Iceman moves up through the ranks, this is sort of alluded to in the film as well, that he would have kept calling on Maverick because he knew that Maverick was the guy for the job.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. Interestingly, they actually sort of allude to a real life event. There really haven't been air-to-air fights as much anymore.
Yeah.
And actually an American shooting down another plane in the air is really, really rare. And they mentioned that Hangman had done it, and they sort of allude to that it was like a Cold War era plane. This is sort of alluding to a real event that actually happened.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Go Hangman.
Go Hangman. I liked the fact that Glenn Powell?
Mm-hmm.
Glenn Powell's character was Hangman, and he was kind of a dick. Mm-hmm. And in the first Top Gun, Iceman is kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So, like, apparently, if you're something man, you're going to be a dick.
Well, and he chews a toothpick like Iceman did in the first film.
That's right.
And then they get him and Rooster get the thing at the end where they like bro out a little.
Totally.
They see eye to eye. So
I was kind of expecting Hangman to be Iceman's son.
Oh yeah,
like,
it might have been a little too much.
Yeah. Ooh, the two sons are playing against each other. And...
I think Val Kilmer's actual children were in the film.
Really?
I think they were the kids playing outside when Tom Cruise goes to visit him.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Pretty sweet.
That was a really beautiful scene. There was just that one true scene between them because there were text messages back and forth.
Yeah.
I was really delighted that you actually heard Val Kilmer's. Was it not his voice?
So they actually had have a AI create something that sounded like his voice.
Oh no!
So it wasn't actually his voice. But,
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to break that to you. Sorry to break your heart.
I was like, well, how lovely he was able to. But I understand he has Did he have throat cancer?
He had throat cancer, like Iceman. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But
wow.
it's a real hit. It's close to home.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the surgery, I think it was the surgery that they did on Val Kilmer for his cancer, basically destroyed his vocal cords, and so he can't speak anymore. So that's why they had to use a computer to generate his voice. Yeah. Tom Cruise actually fought really hard and was like adamant that Val Kilmer be in this film.
Yeah.
So
good.
He was like a real champion for that. People, you know, like Tom Cruise, there's a lot that like you can say about Tom Cruise, and like I don't want to get into it because I think, you know, he's probably party to some bad stuff, but there's also like a lot of like really sweet, great things you hear about him.
Yes.
And yeah, it makes it a real conflict when you think about him.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh God, I had to write this line down. When they're talking about, when John Hamm is talking to Maverick about about making sure that they can complete the mission. And Maverick goes, and how to come home.
And how to come home.
And has to repeat it twice.
Because John Hamm doesn't respond because he knows it's a suicide mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he is determined to not let it be a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Unless it's him, you know, like he'll sacrifice himself for this, but he doesn't want that to affect any of the younger people.
And I think that's the nice thing about John Hamm's character, his journey in the film, and sort of like coming to respect Maverick. He has to do it reluctantly, and then comes to it naturally by the very end. That when they're heading out, he's like, "Come back, you know, get home."
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really well put together film.
Yeah.
It would be really easy to just sort of look at it and gloss it over as like a fun action film, like a big budget, you know, makes lots of money film, but there's actually a lot of nuance to it, and it's very sweet.
Yeah. The emotional aspects of that movie, I was a little choked up.
Yeah? What choked you up? What got you?
Well, definitely Iceman dying. And there was something about the end that he was able to bring everyone back and bring everyone closer together. Yeah. And the don't think. Oh, what the hell are you thinking? You told me not to think.
Yeah. It's a pretty great line.
I love that. And it was true. Like sometimes you just have to do. Yeah. Instead of
you have to act on instinct when you're moving at however many G's. You got to just
when you're moving at 750 some odd miles per hour. Yeah. You can't take a second to think because there's a brick wall. You know.
I think the parts that kind of got me emotionally was when you see Rooster speaking to his dad. You talk to me, Dad. Yeah. And I was like, oh, he's doing Talk to Me Goose also, which is pretty great.
Right.
And then almost the very end when Maverick says, "I'm sorry, Goose." Yeah. And I was just like, oh man.
Well, but even the part where he says, "Talk to me, Dad," and then Maverick starts talking
for him. Yeah. It's pretty great.
That was a little teary for me. Yeah. Oh God. Something that I really enjoyed, I gotta say, the conversation about how the threat of AI is taking jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just felt so timely.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too because, you know, Tom Cruise's last film, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, was very much about AI threatening the world. So
interesting. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't even considered that.
I, for one, bow down to our robot overlords.
Oh.
No, I'm just joking. It's a Simpsons thing. I'm just joking.
Uh-oh. Wes, it's okay. Blink twice. Another thing that I really enjoyed was when Iceman wrote out, "It's time to let go." Yeah. And Maverick clearly wasn't. And I didn't write down what he said in response and just looks back at.
He just points back at it. Yeah.
Like that's.
Sometimes that's all you have to say.
Yeah.
You don't have to go on and on and on. Sometimes it's just there.
I guess at first when we were watching the beach football, it seemed like such nonsense to me. I'm like, what is this game? I've never seen this random setup of beach football.
Yeah.
And John Hamm's character was like, basically, what the fuck is this beach football thing they should be practicing? Flying. And I thought it was so interesting.
Dogfight football.
It's dogfight football.
Yeah.
That was very clever. And it really got them closer together.
Yeah.
Which...
When everybody's cheering on Bob.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet little Bob.
Yeah, I love Bob. Louis Pullman, you asked about.
I did.
Is the son of Bill Pullman. So interestingly, Bill Pullman fake flies an F-18 in Independence Day, and Louis Pullman real flies an F-18 in...
Yes.
I think it's an F-18 in Independence Day. I could be wrong about what plane it is.
Right.
But fake flies a fighter jet.
For sure.
And Louis Pullman actually flies around in a fighter jet in this.
I was really amused when at the end they have to get off of Russia. We'll just say Russia. Because both of them lose their planes.
Yeah.
And they find, quote, a bag of ass.
A bag of ass.
F-14.
Which is the plane he flies in the first film.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And that makes it so much funnier that he remarks, Rooster, remarks how old
it
this
is.
this airplane is. And I guess if you're working on things, on planes from this year, or, current airplanes, you're not going to be used to something that's 40 years old.
Yeah.
I can't believe that it's 40 years old.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, when he's like, he's looking for which breaker to flip, and he's like, "Can you give me some tips on this?" And he's like, "That was your dad's department, not mine." So that's another sort of like nod to this was the old plane that they used to fly. So I like that you brought that up. So that situation, based on a true story. So, in World War II, there was an American Air Force pilot by the name of Colonel Bruce Ward Carr. He lived until like 1998. He was highly decorated United States Air Force colonel. And during World War II, he was shot down over Germany on November 2nd, 1944. And after evading capture for several days, snuck into a Luftwaffe airfield, stole an enemy plane, which he flew back to Allied lines, managing to make it back to his home field in France. He was unable to lower the landing gear and was forced to make a belly landing. Upon landing, he was presumed to be, a bad guy. And he was recognized by the group commander. And like Maverick, this guy was a flying ace. He had shot down more than 5 enemies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they threw a little truth in there.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Like the fact that someone was that brave and
resourceful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else in there?
Well, I did have a list of negatives.
Okay.
There aren't a lot.
Sure.
I have to ask, at the beginning, the highway to the danger zone.
Yeah.
Was that the original version?
It was the original version that they used in Top Gun. Kenny Loggins recorded an updated version, and Tom Cruise insisted that they use the original.
Okay.
So interestingly, even all of the footage of the planes taking off. So it starts with the same text. These elite pilots go to this place and they call it Top Gun, blah blah blah. That's the same with the addition of women. And then it cuts to the planes on the fighter jet and in the danger zone. All of that is the same as the first film, except it's not the same footage. So it's the same song and it's similar shots, updated planes and things. And I think it's the USS Abraham Lincoln in this. You see a little Lincoln bobblehead in one of the things. And in the old movie, it was the Enterprise. So the story, the interesting story about how they shot this new one is the DP really wanted to get, that real golden background hue, and had heard what their course was going to be, and it's an actual naval ship. So he just was like, kind of upset that he wasn't going to get the light that he wanted. And he was kind of, kicking rocks down below and just upset. And somebody walked up to him and said, hey, buddy, what's wrong? And he's like, man, if we were just 20 degrees this way, like I would be able to get the shots that I wanted. And when it came time just before shooting, he noticed that the ship veered the direction he needed it to go. It turns out that unbeknownst to him, he was talking to the captain of the ship.
Oh my gosh.
And they made it happen. And the really cool thing so he got his light. And the cool thing is that on the original Top Gun, notoriously, I don't know if it was Tony Scott or if it was the DP on the original Top Gun, but supposedly paid $25,000 extra to get them to change course on the ship, so that way they could get the lighting that they wanted. So it's fortunately this guy didn't have to pay money.
Yeah.
But it's sort of serendipitous that something really, really similar happened on this shoot as well.
Wow.
They actually brought back a lot of the crew from the original Top Gun. They including some of the camera people, and they wisely told a lot of stories about shooting Top Gun and about how we shot in this really specific canyon at this specific angle. And so they ended up going back to the same canyon to shoot a lot of these training sequences were in the same places that they shot the original Top Gun.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So it has like a really nice continuity to it.
Nice.
Yeah. And, sadly, Tony Scott died, committed suicide. He was developing a sequel to Top Gun. After the original came out, that was the first question people asked Tom Cruise, like, sequel, when's this going to happen? He's like, no. Only want to do a sequel if the story is right.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as time, and he became more of who we know Tom Cruise to be now, the daredevil pilot, race car driver guy, he became insistent on it being authentic as well as having a good story. And just prior to, so they tried to do another one in the 90s, and he was like, nope. And then Tony Scott, 2010s, early 2010s, had sort of put together a story, and Tom Cruise was like, I'm on board. And I think they were starting to like get things put together. And then Tony Scott killed himself, jumped off a bridge. And it killed everything, and then they had to kind of start from square one.
Yeah. And
then it took them another 10 years, roughly, to put a new idea together and put it together. And I had heard at one point, back when Tom Cruise was still married to Katie Holmes, that he was going to be the instructor and she was going to be the new, like, Maverick character. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I had heard a long time ago. And so when they finally came up with this idea, they actually went to Ridley Scott and said, hey, your brother did the first one. We'd be really honored if you do this. And he was like, this is not my area.
Yeah.
Big budget, like, action things, which is interesting because he's done some big budget, like, action films. But they're mostly like dudes with swords.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, this isn't my area, but I'll give you a list of people. And they approached several people who, for one reason or another, didn't end up doing it.
Yeah.
Some people were just like, I couldn't do it justice. The first one's, he's such a great film, and I don't think I can make something as good. So they ended up moving on to Joseph Kosinski.
Yeah.
And Joseph Kosinski has now made 2 reboots of 80s films. One being Tron. He made Tron Legacy, and then Top Gun, and now he's made Top Gun Maverick. So
Wow.
yeah. And I think he does a pretty good job. He does a good job of being innovative without forcing the camera down your throat, right? So, like, a lot of filmmakers will be innovative, but you notice what they're doing. Like, it's like, and that's fine. I love it. Like, you look at a guy like David Fincher, and you recognize his camera angles. Spielberg's similar, right? There's just something really, like, that draws you to the composition and the way the camera moves. Or the lighting. Spielberg's got those, like, rays of light in the mist, and those sweeping camera, like the camera pushes and stuff on the hero, stuff like that. And then David Fincher's got, like, a really unique, like, if the subject is moving, then the camera's moving kind of a thing. And then there are some directors who are like, I'll innovate in other ways. And and then make the camera kind of invisible so you can just be there and go for the ride. And that's what this guy does.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. He also did this movie called Only the Brave, which is about firefighters, wildlife firefighters, and that also had Miles Teller in it.
Sounds like he likes Miles Teller.
He likes Miles Teller. He did Oblivion with Tom Cruise. So,
Okay.
But those two movies aren't as big or as popular as Tron Legacy, which I actually think Tron Legacy, I think at the time people kind of poo-pooed it, and I think it's maybe a little underrated. I think it's not perfect, but it's pretty solid. I was pretty happy with it, especially on a rewatch. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, we could talk a little bit more at the camera innovations when you get done with your.
Yeah.
I want to hear more what you have.
Okay. Well, I have to mention when there was the downward spiral when was it
Rooster and Maverick?
Rooster?
They were
Okay.
sort of fighting each other about who's going to pull up first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I just want to remind you, all of these are real planes.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do I say it? Like, it's
How
not
do they do it?
actually Miles Teller and Tom Cruise
No.
spiraling downward like that.
So if you see them in the plane, it's them. Those really wide shots, they did bring in stunt pilots specifically that like Air Force trained, like Blue Angels style pilots to come in that specialize in stunts like that to do those things. So you're right. That's not Miles Teller. But if you see Miles Teller in the cockpit, he's in the cockpit in the plane. It's flying.
Yes.
He is taking part in that.
Were they all actually flying? I'm sure Tom Cruise was, because that's...
I think they weren't. They were flying to some extent.
Okay.
I think there's a real pilot behind them. So like so you have the planes. I don't know what the technical terms are, but there's the plane with the two pilots. You have a navigator, and then you have the pilot in the front, who specialize in. They were like painting the target with the laser,
right?
And then you have like the standard one pilot. So I think like when you saw whoever's in the front or the solo pilot, there's another pilot in the back.
Okay.
And when they're showing like Bob in the back, there's a professional pilot in the front, I believe.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I do know that they did learn to do a lot of things. They learned to turn, they learned to take off. But I think a lot of it is, it's them in the plane, but not necessarily them doing all the crazy shit.
Okay.
I mean, they're experiencing the crazy shit, but
yeah.
But not necessarily doing it all.
Right, because that feels super dangerous.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Some of the planes were flying under 50 feet from the ground. So let's talk technical stuff.
Okay.
So there were helicopters with cameras to capture things from a distance and up in the air. There were a ground crew. So when you'd see the plane like flying directly over the camera, when it's flying really low, that's the stuff where their ceiling is like 50 feet or whatever.
Oh, wow.
So and actors were participating in those. Then you had what they call Cinejet, which is a fighter jet, a small fighter jet, a one-man craft, I believe, with a camera mounted into the nose just underneath, and that would do a lot of the like really fast, complicated stuff up close, especially when you need to see that there are people in the cockpit. Anytime like a plane was on like one side of the mountain, you could see the mountain going by really fast in the foreground, and the camera's keeping up with them. That's the Cinejet. And then lastly, they had roughly six cameras inside the cockpit with the actors. And so they worked with the Navy because they needed to know, like, we need to know what's going to withstand these, G's you're pulling, because the actors were pulling like 8.5 G's. So they needed to know how the camera equipment could withstand it and how they could like get as many angles as possible. So like think about trying to put mean, a cockpit's not very big. How do you put 6 cameras inside a cockpit, right? All at the same time. This wasn't like moving the camera.
Right.
Because you don't have the luxury of like, they would go up for 90 minutes at a time, come back, review the footage, then go back up. So Miles Teller had a really bad allergic reaction because he had jet fuel in his blood, and turns out he's allergic to it.
Oh my God.
They were up there a lot.
Yeah.
So they developed these new cameras, and they are IMAX 6K quality. So it's like not tiny GoPros. What they did is they developed lenses that could be mounted all at the same time that fed to a box that was like more put away or more hidden, that was essentially doing the recording. Cool. So like a hard drive there. Wow. So very, very, again, talking about innovating, right? There's a director who's like thinking of things that you can do to like show angles that you wouldn't normally get to see. And so 5 or 6 cameras running all at the same time, all getting slightly different angles. But that meant that the actors had to start and stop the camera. That meant they had to do their own makeup inside, like do makeup touch-ups. They had to do their own cinematography and lighting, know where the sun is coming, so that way they weren't backlit or had appropriate lighting on themselves. They also had to not throw up and say their lines and react to other lines. They had to interact with each other.
Yeah.
Miles Teller learned the hard way that if you don't hit stop on the recording, it can corrupt the whole thing. So they had a problem with that. So, it was a lot of things that they'd have to slate. They had to learn do other things that they don't normally have to do when it comes to filmmaking. Right. In addition to not shitting their pants while they're like, flying 50 feet from the ground. Right. So, so they went through really, really intense training to be able to do this. They told them, hey, you guys are going to do this for real. And I think they kind of thought, we're going to show up. They're going to take us up in a plane. Let us feel it once. So that way, when we're pretending, we know what it's like. They get there and then realize, no, you're going to really learn to do this. So they put them through all sorts of simulations, like ejecting. They had to learn how to parachute. And like a lot of this stuff, like learn what things you're supposed to say over the radio, what things you need to do if you have a problem. These are the switches you got to flip.
Wow.
They had to learn these things because they were safety issues. If something went wrong, they needed to be able to do it.
Yeah.
They had to learn what to do if they end up in water. If they crash in water, how do you get out? So they did a whole bunch of different water tasks. One of which is they put them in a giant metal box. They strapped them into a chair, blindfolded them, filled it full of water, tipped it upside down, and said, "Get out."
Oh my God.
So they had to figure out how to hook themselves, where the windows were, how to unlatch the windows, swim to safety. They went through over the course of weeks and months what people spend years doing in the Navy. So,
my God.
And the Navy personnel that was there to advise, so they were convinced, they were betting on it. They were convinced people would wash out. Nobody did.
Wow.
However, from my understanding, 3 of the 6 newcomers threw up every time they went up. That happens, what can you do? They started them small. They started with so Tom Cruise is actually the one who created their training plan. So he started them in Cessnas, where they would learn to do some really simple, turns. They would take off and land. There was an instructor with them, but they would be the ones controlling the takeoff and the landing.
Wow.
Then they would work up to, so Cessna is a small single prop plane. They worked up to another prop plane that was more stunt driven. So that way they could do rolls and loops and really simple, easy things like that. Then they moved up to L-39s, which is a jet. It's a fighter jet. Wow. Very small. But then that got them to understand sort of the speed and the force that they were going to go through, and then worked themselves up to F-18s.
Wow.
And then that's what they ended up in, as I hit my mic. That's what they end up in the film.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty intense training. Every day that they were going to shoot in the sky, they would have a 3-hour briefing, and I believe it was led by Tom Cruise. And the idea is they were talking about temperature, weather, wind, what the scene consists of, where the planes need to be, how the cameras were going to shoot them, which cameras were going to shoot them, and at what angles. Like, they would spend 3 hours just briefing at the entire team, actors, pilots, safety people, crew, just to be on top of it. And, you know, I was thinking about this when we were watching the movie. It's amazing nobody died on this, right?
Yes.
Like, but it's a testament to, and the reason why, in some ways it's not that amazing, because they really took their time to make sure they were doing things right. And again, say what you want about Tom Cruise, but he's a professional, and he doesn't show up to set unless he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from, like, I know people who have worked with him on multiple movies, and they say, like, every day he shows up, he already knows everything's going to happen. He knows where the camera's going to be, and he knows all of his lines and how he's supposed to move. He does it flawlessly the first time. And so that's just like a testament to, like, you know, the importance of safety to him.
Oh, yeah.
Famously, he had a leaked audio of him freaking out at people because they were breaking COVID protocols.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you know, people are going to die, and this is money and lives, and, like, you know, you're going to sink this whole thing.
Yeah.
So he takes that stuff seriously. But I was thinking about it in terms of, like, the Rust production with Alec Baldwin, where something so simple should have been easily avoidable. But this movie with Tom Cruise, this huge, like, crazy thing, planes flying 50 feet off the ground, nobody dies.
Yeah.
Because they took the time to, like, take care.
Yep.
Makes all the difference.
Huge.
Take care, people.
Huge difference.
Did you have any other notes by chance?
I suppose the only other note I have is the short, intimate scene with Jennifer Connelly and
They kiss on the bed.
where they kiss on the
scandal.
bed. The way that Tom Cruise is propped up with the pillows, it looks so incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so unnatural.
Yeah.
And that's really the only part that stuck out as, like, this just doesn't look real, which is odd.
Yeah.
A movie where planes are flying and bombs are dropping.
Yeah.
Him in bed just
Yeah.
looked so awkward.
I wonder what the reasoning was behind that.
Yeah. Like,
What
maybe
if
he
he
didn't
was, like, hurt, or
he didn't want his neck to be bent or something.
oh,
Like,
yeah, it could be. Yeah.
he didn't want to show
You didn't
any
want the turkey waddle.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Could be
the
that.
only thing I can think of.
Or maybe maybe he injured himself in the football scene, or like, who knows?
That's fair.
I mean, I don't know. It's probably a vanity thing, but or it could be like, you know, without the stuff behind him, maybe it slouched him too much, or there wasn't enough support for the composition or the lighting or something.
Like, we don't all know what people look like when they're laying in bed, though.
Yeah, but movies aren't going to show the unflattering. So that's all you have, huh?
That's all I have.
That's it. Yeah,
I know.
that's actually pretty good notes. I appreciate your notes. So this is the highest rated Tom Cruise film to date, and it is the only Tom Cruise film to break $1 billion.
With a B.
With a B.
Wow.
And this thing wasn't released in China.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, usually China's a big chunk.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a testament to, like, you know, popular culture, you know, and sometimes they get stuff really right. Sometimes you get some really dumb stuff, but sometimes you get it right. And I think this is one where they got it right. I love it.
I do too. I really enjoyed it. I was not expecting to. I was like, okay, let's pull out my pen and paper. I'm going to take some notes.
Yeah.
And then I found myself not taking notes because I was so enthralled in the story.
I was like, beforehand, I was like, I'm so excited for you. So, yeah, it was pretty good.
Plus, it was great to see my sweet friend Rachel Winfrey at the beginning.
Yeah, shout out to Rachel.
Giving Tom Cruise a glass of water in that, I'm guessing it's the Mojave Desert, where he's crashed his plane.
Yeah, it's a specific cafe, and I don't think the cafe's in the desert, actually. I think it's maybe not that far.
Okay.
Sorry, I can look it up real quick, because I actually had it in my notes, my possible notes, and then didn't end up. There's so many like little things in here.
Of course. I did find it amusing when he asked, "Where am I?" and the little boy said Earth, but
Earth.
he sounded like he was British.
I thought he sounded I thought he was like art. I was like, what? Oh, you mentioned the football game earlier. That's like a reference to the first film too, right? They play volleyball on the beach.
Oh, that's right. Volleyball.
Playing with the boys. It's like this like super kind of like homoerotic scene with like oiled up dudes. In this film, my understanding was that the actors, I think Glenn Powell said it was like, the best example of like fragile egos, because everybody, the director didn't tell them when they were going to shoot that scene. So they're just like working out in the gym like every day, eating super healthy, just trying to be as ripped as possible. So that way when they took their shirts off around each other, they were all like, nah, I'm more ripped. And then so they shot the scene, and then they were like, we can celebrate. So they all went out and had like ice cream and like French fries and tater tots and burgers and stuff. And then like a week or two later, Tom Cruise is like, so we have to reshoot the football scene because none of it's usable. And they all like ran back to the gym and started working out again, trying to get ripped. And so they ended up reshooting it a second time. So,
Oh, yeah.
Jennifer Connelly also had a fear of flying, by the way.
Really?
So the plane that he flies, it's like a P-51 Mustang. Yeah, that sounds right. He flies a P-51 Mustang, which is a World War II era plane. So like if Top Gun was made in the World War II era, that would have been the plane that they would be flying. Tom Cruise owns that plane.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. And so to help her get over her fear of flying, he's like, let's get in this plane and we're going to do some barrel rolls and we're going to do some light loops and ease you into it. And of course they shot that scene for the very end of the film. And apparently I guess she's maybe partially over her fear. Maybe it helped. There's also a scene where they're on a boat, and apparently this is the one thing Tom Cruise is not good at, is sailing on a boat. He doesn't know anything about yachting. And so you can see him like standing on the boat, like real uneasy. That's like genuinely, and they had to cancel that shoot day twice because there was no wind. So they moved where they were going to do it. They moved it like towards San Francisco, and there was so much wind. It was like practically dangerous. You can see they're like about to fall out of that boat. So they had somebody below deck ready to take over the wheel if needed. But they were like, this is...
Yeah, those were some choppy waters they were in.
Yeah, maybe one of the more dangerous stunts in the...
Right?
Somehow. Anthony Edwards, who played Goose in the first film, did get to see this film. Tom Cruise brought it over and showed it to him personally.
Aww.
Which I think is very sweet.
That is very sweet.
Sorry, I'm still looking for this this information about the cafe, because it's a real cafe.
Yeah.
It has a different name than what it is, and I think it's like Carl's Cafe or something in the movie. But for those wondering, the car Penny drives is a 1973 Porsche 911. It's an homage to the car Charlie drives in the original, which is a 1958 Porsche 356.
Oh.
So there you go.
There you go.
Many Tom Cruise movies have a Bob in them for some reason.
That's a good name.
Bob. I love Bob in this movie.
I do too.
Yeah, I was real worried. I thought for sure. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's Cecil's Cafe in the movie, and it's the halfway house in Santa Clarita, California, which is not the Mojave Desert.
Not at all.
It's like Orange Grove territory. it's like where Six Flags Magic Mountain is.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So, yeah. But interestingly, that's maybe the direction, probably not exactly the same area, but the direction that Steven Spielberg shot the movie Duel, which was north of Los Angeles, kind of in that Santa Clarita area. And there is a little cafe that the guy stops at. I'm sure it's a different cafe, but there's a little cafe that the guy stops at that people still to this day go to because, it was in the Steven Spielberg movie. And
wow.
Which... Listen to the Duel episode with Steve and I of View the Right Things. There's some really, really cool like factoids about that and how Spielberg sort of saved money and time to shoot that movie and how methodical he was. It was really cool. So
that's
check that
very
out.
clever.
All right. I'm actually, I was going to say, we talked about this beforehand. I was like, we'll pretend to do this. And I'm just going to cut through the BS and just say, so we're just getting back into the swing of this. And I don't have our list of movies printed and cut up yet to put in the bucket. So what Alexis did ahead of time is she picked a number, and I looked that number up on the list. And that's the movie we're going to go with for our next film. So for all of you listening, you can watch this movie prior to the next episodes. If you haven't seen it already, a lot of people have seen this one, I think. But it might be a good time to get yourself reacquainted with it. Our next film is going to be, do you want to say it? You want me to say it? I'll say it. Braveheart. Starring Mel Gibson. So we'll definitely not be shy about talking about how we don't like him, but separate the art from the artist maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And talk about the film itself. So, until then, everybody, feels really good to be able to say this once again. Bon cinema.